Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 11. And today we're talking about this weekend's fight between Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders. Let's go.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong man, good boy, just.
Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo. Can Billy Joe pull off the huge upset? Maybe. But I think what we're going to see is Canelo establish his dominance, establish him as being this era's great, the true crown wearer of the post-Floyd, post-Manny era, Canelo. Now, of course, I don't think this is going to be an easy fight. I don't think he's going to get the stoppage here in this sense. I don't think, his last few fights, the Kovalev fight, the Smith fight, Ildrum, literally who, those weren't too hot. Kovalev was too washed. The name is serious, yes. Kovalev is the best fighter Canelo's fought in a long time, but that wasn't the Kovalev we all remember. That you didn't fight the crusher, you fought the crushed. So with with Billy Joe, you're seeing a legit undefeated, real kind of guy here. Unlike Smith, I think with Billy Joe, you see a real boxer, like a slick boxer. We've seen what Billy Joe was able to do with Lemieux all those years ago. And some of my friends have been saying, that was a long time ago, man. Don't you think that Billy Joe slowed down? Billy Joe seems to fight to his level of opposition, historically. He's looked horrendous against absolute nobodies, and then has come out and beaten the likes of Lemieux quite easily. So I'm actually expecting Billy Joe to box the night of his life. But I don't think it'll be enough. I do not. I don't think that Billy Joe has enough, tell you the truth, enough pop to worry Canelo. And this is where the betting gets interesting, as I think Canelo wins this. Without too much of a problem. But can he get the stoppage? I don't think Billy Joe, if you look at Billy Joe's fights, he's been hurt a couple of times, but he has a pretty decent recovery time, and he seems to not have taken much damage through the course of his career. So Billy Joe is a young fighter in that sense. Unlike some of these, like Kovalev was an old guy who was in his late 30s. Billy Joe, not so much. For a 31-year-old, he's about as young as you can get in terms of fight wear and tear. By the time Lomachenko's 31, 32, he's really old because he's had so many fights. Billy Joe, not really. He's got 30 fights and half of them are against nobodies, right? And outside, he's been Willie Monroe Jr., Lemieux, and Martin Murray and Andy Lee. Those are pretty much the names on his resume. I'm not counting the young Eubank Jr. He was too young at the time, and he got started late. So maybe if they fought now, it would be a little bit more intriguing than when they fought the first time. So Billy Joe's also going to be a little bit taller than Canelo. Billy Joe's 5'11" to Canelo's, I think he's 5'8" or so. So 5'8", yeah. So Canelo is going to be trying to walk Billy Joe down. Billy Joe's going to be boxing from the outside. You're going to see a similar fight to Lemieux. You're going to have kind of like the bull and the matador scenario, except Canelo's probably the best matador, this side of 160 pounds. You can argue Golovkin is probably a better guy. He can cut off the ring better than Canelo, but Golovkin is just, unfortunately, his time is up. His age had caught up. Father time, as they say, is undefeated. Eventually, every fighter experiences a decline, and I think it's evident with Golovkin now for numerous years. Since the Brook fight, I think for sure it's been evident that he's on the decline. So I think Canelo is probably the best pressure fighter we have, at least smart-wise. We have a lot of really great pressure fighters, but in terms of intellect, Canelo is quite phenomenal. That Kovalev fight, he was able to, took him a while, but he was able to really find those openings on Kovalev. Consistently kept marching at him, touching the body, touching the head, and it wasn't particularly easy to do. Even though that was a diminished Kovalev, I think the story of that fight is Canelo came in and knocked him out. That wasn't exactly it. I don't think Kovalev gets knocked out until the 11th round or 12th or 10th round or something like that. And up until that point, now I've said this before, that was a 50-50 fight. Canelo was not having the easiest time with even a highly diminished Kovalev. Like I said, I'll stick by this, but I do not think Canelo beats a prime Kovalev. I think Kovalev probably hurts him, but that's not the point. The point is he fought Kovalev when he needed to fight Kovalev, and that's a sign of a smart boxer. So with Billy Joe, he's going to be walking him down. Will Billy Joe be able to kind of make him miss the same way that he was able to make Lemieux miss? Now, you have to understand that Canelo is significantly better than Lemieux. Significantly. And I think the pop is comparable, although obviously Lemieux's a stronger puncher, I think, overall. And the knockout ratio will say it as well. But it's a similar kind of fight where Billy Joe knows he can't really take too many of Canelo's shots, but Canelo's going to be much better at holding him to the ropes. Billy Joe won't be able to move, and as a matter of fact, this is why we have so much controversy surrounding this week. They want a 25-mile ring or whatever he's talking about. Look, you're fighting Canelo. He dictates everything. That's the way it works. When you bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the table, you dictate ring size, type of gloves, who comes out, how long the anthems are there 5 anthems, everything. All that stuff is Canelo's choosing. Welcome to the game, boys. Billy Joe sitting out here like, his father saying, whoever was saying, like, we're going to leave the fight. You're not leaving millions of dollars on the table over ring size. You take that L if you must, but you continue with the fight. First of all, Billy Joe, if you were to pull out this fight, you would be irreparable. Your reputation would be irreparably damaged. Irreparably damaged. Yes, there you go. Talking over myself. So, he was never going to pull out of this fight. He's just complaining, maybe seeing if they can get some kind of concession. Canelo was right to stick to his guns and not concede an inch of that ring. Floyd Mayweather chose the biggest rings at all times when he fought, especially against fighters like Maidana. Why? Because that's what you do when you're the A side, when you're the biggest name in the game. You're going to rig it a little bit in your favor. And there's nothing wrong with that. Why should Canelo be chasing, Saunders around for 12 rounds? First of all, nobody wants to see that. Second of all, it's not advantageous to him. But that's what Saunders is going to have to do. He has to keep Canelo turning. I've said it before that if Canelo does have a weakness outside of just being a naturally smaller guy by a few inches, is that Canelo does not have the fastest feet. He seems to have really great defense work now, great power. The offense is spectacular. But his feet are about average in terms of speed. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just everyone has different qualities. So this is where you want to exploit this if you're a Billy Joe Saunders. Now, while I'm saying I believe, of course, Canelo will win and the like, Billy Joe at time has shown brilliance, the kind of brilliance that is necessary to beat Canelo. Remember, Canelo, if you remember the Trout fight and the Lara fight, is it the Trout fight? Am I thinking of the Trout fight? I'm thinking of, the Trout fight, exactly. Those were close fights, and he can be fought and outboxed on the outside. I mean, the Trout fight was actually right before the Mayweather fight. Speaking of which, Canelo could be outboxed. Now, of course, this is not going to be the Canelo of 7 years ago. This is a much more advanced Canelo now. The Canelo of 2021 is possibly the best Canelo we're seeing. This span, this 5-fight, 6-fight Canelo, probably starting the second Gennady Golovkin fight, has been, this has been his prime these past 3 years, and it'll probably continue for another 2 years or so. So we probably have another 2 years of prime Canelo before we start seeing any real signs of wear and tear and slippage. Again, these things can appear any moment. But with Billy Joe, as I said, he's shown the kind of brilliance and the kind of tactical mastery or spoilage, you may want to say, because to the viewer, it's not always, to the casual viewer, it's not always the most entertaining type of fight. But he's shown this kind of skill that he will need to beat Canelo. The thing is, can he do it for long enough to actually win on the judges' scorecard? Can he even win on the judges' scorecards? That's a whole other question. Now, anyone who's ever watched boxing can attest that there are favorites. There is a bias coming into every single fight. There were a couple of Floyd Mayweather fights. Maidana won, Castillo won, maybe even the De La Hoya fight, where the scores would indicate, the judging indicates a sort of bias towards Mayweather. Many people to this day will say that he never beat Castillo that first time. I've watched the fight once, and I thought it was a close fight, but I thought Mayweather edged it. I've seen the De La Hoya fight. I've seen the first Maidana fight. I will tell you, on first watching Maidana, when I wasn't scoring, actively scoring, I think I had that fight 6-6. And then on rewatching, I think I gave it to Mayweather 7-5. But nonetheless, Mayweather, the judges saw it much wider than that. And I think you're going to have the same thing with Canelo. I don't even think Billy Joe can actually win a decision against him. I don't know. I don't think the judges will give it to him. He'd have to completely run the table the way that Calzaghe did against Jeff Left Hook Lacey. With Calzaghe, he did it in such an emphatic way that you could not give him pretty much every round. And that's kind of the performance that Billy Joe's going to have to put on Canelo. I also don't think he'll have the power to stop Canelo. Canelo has taken punches from Golovkin. He's taken punches from Kovalev. Billy Joe Saunders has a sub 50% knockout ratio. He's 30-0 with 14 KOs. That's right under 50% for the knockout ratio. He's not stopping Canelo. If Golovkin and Kovalev landing clean shots can't stop Canelo, you're not going to stop Canelo. It's not going to happen. So Billy Joe Saunders' ability to win is only via decision. And here's the crux of the matter. As I said earlier, he probably can't win a decision with these judges unless he completely embarrasses Canelo. So when we're betting, this is when I'm betting, not we. Come on, guys, please. You're grown people. You make your own bets. Please, this is not financial advice. This is not betting advice. This is just what I'm going to do. Please. So, okay. So if we're going to look at what we can bet on, or what I can bet on, your general odds look like this. -7 on DraftKings. Trademark. On DraftKings. So you got -770 for Alvarez and a +450 for Saunders. Now, of course, you can take the -770 for Canelo, but, that means you got to bet $770 to win 100. Now, if you think Canelo's 100% to guaranteed to win, please go right ahead and do so, but I'm not going to put up, upwards of $1,400 to make any sort of money. Taking Billy Joe outright seems like it's too big of a risk. Yeah, +450 sounds good, but this isn't Natasha Jonas of last week. I don't think this is that kind of fight. Again, I could be wrong, of course. So we have to look elsewhere to find our kind of like money-making opportunity. Now, we can hedge, put a little bit of cash on Billy Joe Saunders, but what do we hedge it with? Now, I said before, realistically speaking, Billy Joe is not going to engage in a wild firefight with Canelo. He's going to try and keep this fight as boring as possible, stay on the outside, and use Canelo's slower feet as a way to stay alive. So the over-under starts to look pretty good here. The over 10.5 is at -162, and the under 10.5 is at +120. Now, the only way the under 10.5 happens is if Canelo comes out and stops Billy Joe. Can it happen? Of course. Canelo's great, but I really think Billy Joe's going to be the kind of guy who's going to be hugging and wrestling and keeping this fight on the outside and trying to frustrate Canelo for as long as possible. I actually think the best play here is to take, or what I'm probably going to do, is to take not even the over, but to take the going the distance, which is at -130. I'm thinking about maybe putting a little bit of money on Billy Joe and the -130 for the distance. Now, of course, if Canelo wins by knockout, you lose on both ends. If Billy Joe wins, you win some money. You win more than 4 times your money, almost 5 times your money. But I like it. I like the going the distance because, as I said, I don't think I really don't think. Certainly, Billy Joe's not stopping Canelo, so that possibility's out. So we already kind of eliminated one inside the distance possibility. Of course, there are freak occurrences. Someone gets injured, a cut opens up, blah 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 blah. Every single one of those things can happen, but those things are rare. We're trying to be as technical as possible with our straight pick. So we're eliminating all the really rare possibilities in this case. So knocking Canelo out's not happening. So realistically, we have two things: either Billy Joe wins by decision, or Canelo knocks him out. Now, because like I said, I believe that Billy Joe's going to try and spoil the fight, I think it going the distance is most likely. But I do not think Billy Joe can win a decision unless he puts on the performance of a lifetime. So for me, realistically, the only option left is the distance play, Canelo by decision. Now, if you're 100% confident that Canelo wins the fight by decision, then the Canelo by decision on DraftKings is plus 150. That's a straight Canelo on points. So again, that means you bet $100, you win $150. Just, so you guys understand what that means. Now, is that a good play? It is, but like I said, Billy Joe is an undefeated fighter. So with an undefeated fighter comes a certain level of, like, winning begets winning. When you start winning, you keep when you keep winning, when you never lose, your confidence level is really high. You kind of don't believe you could lose. Think about the way when you start getting older. I'm now beyond my, I guess, physical peak, right, of your mid to early mid 20s, and you start to notice your body, just minor things. You never think about it before, but as you're getting stronger and bigger, you don't think that getting older is really a possibility until it starts happening, and then, oh shit, I'm getting older. Well, losing is quite similar. When you're beating everyone up at the gym, you can't even imagine getting beat up until you get beat up. You lose, and then all of a sudden, shit, I can lose. I can get beat up. Something similar occurs with pro fighters. Mayweather's not afraid of anyone because Mayweather's never lost. I mean, he's also, of course, an amazing athlete and such, but he's never intimidated as he's seen everything in the ring. And Billy Joe will carry that with him. He'll carry the undefeated spirit. Undefeated fighters are harder to break because they don't believe they can lose, as they never have. A fighter once defeated is a different type of a fighter, has a different type of charisma and confidence about himself. So I think Billy Joe can really put on a great performance and can potentially steal the fight. I'm just still trying to wrap it around in my mind. Can he actually do it? He looks, of the Instagram shots that we've seen, he's looked amazing, right? But like I said, similar to Andy Ruiz, just don't believe just pictures. You got to see it. I kind of regret betting ahead of time on the Ben Askren-Jake Paul fight, because had I seen what Ben Askren was going to look like on weigh-in, I would have never put any money down on him. Yes, he was supposed to be a fighter, but he looked like trash. He looked like a donut. So I'm going to wait until the weigh-in to see what he actually looks like. And if he makes weight easily, I don't even know. I think, like I said, I don't think this fight is gonna be over before the 12th round. I think this goes to a decision for sure. The question is, do I believe that Billy Joe Saunders has enough of that magic in him to pull off a decision? Does he have that magic? Can he repeat Lemieux? But he's gonna have to do it times 4 or 5 to get to Canelo's level. Just to be at the level that he was against Lemieux may not be enough against Canelo. I think that'll lose him a decision. He's gonna have to be even better. Can he be? That's what we're all wrestling with. The southpaw style is gonna help him. Absolutely, always. This always helps, being a southpaw. But Canelo has a great straight right. He has a great straight right. But I guess here's the interesting part is that you're having Billy Joe Saunders circling away from Canelo's right hand. It means he's going to be circling to his own right. And he's going to be faster. So you can definitely imagine him snagging a few rounds that way, just peppering Canelo with jabs, in and out with the slightly faster feet. Can he do it for all 12 rounds? And will those close rounds, will he get enough of them? Like I said, just today, I read the report that this is already being it's already sold out. Basically, the most seating since Ali Spinks, and more than that, have been sold. Tickets have been sold for an indoor event. That's insane, and those are all Canelo fans. Trust me, there isn't like the gypsy fans flying in from the United Kingdom. So the crowd is going to be going insane every time Canelo even touches in any area of Billy Joe, whether it be the gloves as a non-clean shot or the elbows that Billy Joe was able to block to the body. It won't matter. That crowd is going to be roaring. These judges are, of course, human. They're going to, like if it's a questionable shot, but the crowd's going crazy, will the judge score that as a blow for Canelo and in turn giving him a round? Maybe. So not only is Billy Joe Saunders, I think strategy is going to be to pepper Canelo with jabs from the outside while circling away from his right hand, to his own right, to Billy Joe's right. That's going to be the strategy at distance. Not only does he have to do it for 12 rounds to survive not getting knocked out, he needs to do it in an impressive enough fashion that he can stake 7 of the 12 rounds. Now you see why it's hard to take Billy Joe Saunders by decision. And this is the crux of the matter. Do I take the fight going to distance outright at minus 130, or do I just take Canelo to win by decision at plus 150? Of course, then I get burned. If I just take it going, again, guys, if you take the fight going to the decision at minus 130, any stoppage by either guy is going to, of course, ruin it for you. If you try to hedge it where you take Canelo by decision and Billy Joe Saunders by knockout, one is going to be a plus 475 and the other one's a plus 150, you're going to run into the problem that if Canelo wins by knockout, you then lose your money. Again, you have to figure out how you want to structure this bet. Do your own math. I'm not going to sit here and do the math for you because I'm really leaning towards one straight bet, just Canelo by decision probably. But again, we'll see. Guys, let's talk about Canelo's greatness for a second. We're seeing Canelo fight again. He recently fought in February. He's fighting nonstop. This isn't like Floyd Mayweather, who's fighting once, twice a year, September, May, right? He's fighting nonstop. We may get 4 fights. We may get a fight with him in September. We will get a fight with him in September, and then we may get a fight with him in December. That's gonna be insane. That is gonna be That's gonna be an epic run. Yeah, Yildirim was literally who, but doesn't matter. We just want to see Canelo. Nobody cares. Because in between all this stuff, Canelo has fought Kovalev and Smith and then literally who? And then Billy Joe. That's something, his last like 10 fights have been Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., which was fine. That was a gimme fight. Golovkin won, who everyone thought he was going to get knocked out. Not only did he knock out, he made a great showing for himself. Now, I thought Golovkin won that fight, but doesn't matter. I'm fine with a close Canelo win. It was a draw, actually. Then he fights Golovkin a second time, and this time forced Golovkin a box, which actually I give Golovkin a lot of props. He was actually outboxing Canelo in many areas. Then he fights Rocky Fielding, who fine was a gimme fight, but that was after 2 Golovkin fights. You can expect one gimme fight. Then he goes to Jacobs, who was a legit 160-pound champion. Then he fights Kovalev at 175. Then he fights Smith, undefeated at 168. And then of course he takes a gimme fight with Yildirim. But that's a hell of a run in 4 years. Golovkin, Jacobs, Kovalev, Smith. In a 4-year span, that's pretty damn good. With, of course, you got the Fielding and the Yildirim fight, and now you're gonna get Billy Joe Saunders, who's an undefeated fighter who's champion 160 and now they're fighting for the super middleweight titles. This is a run, guys. Canelo's been on a run, and if I go before them, you got the Liam Smiths, who I guess who was nothing, but you got Amir Khan, Miguel Cotto, Kirkland, Lara, Mayweather, Trout, Shane Mosley, Lopez, Cintron. I mean, come on, guys. This is deeper than like the Mariana Trench. The only person who's got a better active resume in boxing is probably Pacquiao. And like I said, Pacquiao can reasonably be considered one of the 10 greatest fighters of all time. So Canelo is entering like a very, very elite company the longer he fights. And if he continues fighting at this level of opposition, he may go down as maybe one of the 10 greatest fighters himself. Losing to Mayweather at 22 years old is not a blemish, really. It's really not. You can tell that was a little baby in there against a master in Mayweather, against an absolute master, all those years ago. So Canelo is an unbelievably great fighter, a pound for pound number one caliber fighter. Obviously we're waiting on Crawford, but a win here, I think, will just give Canelo the pound for pound title because Crawford hasn't fought anybody. You can't just go on the eye test. So, like I said, I think this fight's going the distance. I really do think this fight is going the distance. I think Canelo wins this fight by decision. I don't think he'll be able to stop Billy Joe, who will be spoiling and staying on the outside as much as he can. I see no chance of Billy Joe Saunders knocking Canelo out, and I see a very small chance that Billy Joe puts together the night of his life and steals a close decision against Canelo. But it'll have to be close because, like I said, these judges, they're going to give every single swing round to Canelo. Every single one of them. The crowd is going to be entirely for Canelo. So I don't think Billy Joe Saunders is winning the decision against Canelo. But again, anything can happen. I've been wrong. I've had a series of weeks where I've clearly chose the fights, I guess maybe misinterpreted the fights, was overzealous in my predictions. So, of course, I could be wrong here. Baby, that's why this sport's so amazing. That's why I love this sport. I will watch this sport forever. This is a quick aside before I end the episode here. Guess who else fighting this week? Tavoris Cloud. Yeah, he's fighting again. We all thought it was over in 2014. But no, he has fought last year against Ryan Soft. And now he's fighting against Ulysses Jimenez. Tavoris Cloud was at one point a light heavyweight champ. This is true. He had victories over Cesar Gonzalez, Clinton Woods, Glenn Johnson, Yusuf Mack, and Gabriel Campillo before finally losing to Bernard Hopkins. He had a 3-fight losing streak. He loses to Bernard Hopkins, right, at the time, and Bernard Hopkins was still considered, the crafty veteran who was in his 40s now, but can still fight. I think Bernard Hopkins actually beat Pascal afterwards, but whatever. Then he loses. He gets stopped by Adonis Stevenson, and then to a 5-fight newbie, Artur Beterbiev stops him in 2 rounds, with 3 knockdowns. That was kind of the end for Mr. Cloud. It was 3 back-to-back losses, and he was you kind of saw that he didn't have what it takes to be at that level at light heavy, especially not over there. That was a strong light heavyweight division. In the early to mid 2000s, light heavyweight division was pretty damn strong, and you had the guys like Kovalev and Stevenson at the very top of it, and it basically was just 2 real killers up there. You couldn't that was not a division for the faint-hearted. You had to be completely a pretty good fighter to be competitive up there in that division between 2013 and say 2017. You really had to be that 5-4 year stretch was just really difficult. These guys were sleeping everybody. Kovalev and Stevenson. It's a shame we never got that fight, but those 2 guys were some of possibly the best punchers at light heavyweight ever. Kovalev was breaking noses. These guys looked like they were afraid in the ring with Kovalev once he started landing, and Stevenson was one-shotting guys left and right. So, I think Cloud understood that, and I think we all understood that by losing to Hopkins, Stevenson, and Beterbiev back to back, there wasn't much where for him to go, and he was young at that time. He was only 32 years old now. Like I said many times, for light heavyweight, 32 years old is still pretty good. You have another few years in your prime, and you can easily fight into your late 30s, 37, 38, 39, which is where you see Kovalev right now. And of course, diminished, but you could continue fighting into those ages. So now to see Tavares coming back is going to be actually quite cool. I actually had no idea he was fighting. He's fighting in Orlando. But it's nice to see him. I'd like to see what he looks like. I don't know who Ulysses Jimenez is, but he's got a pretty poor record, 24-27 with 1 draw. So, but it's like I said, it's good to see a name I haven't quite heard of in 5-6 years being mentioned again. or at least, I ran into it. So, okay, guys, that's going to do it for me. Good luck this weekend. It's over.
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. Just.